Move on to question 21. I call on the honourable member for Rushen. Dr Haywood.
Thank you, Mr President. I've lost it.
In so many ways.
Minister for Education, Sport and Culture, what the temperature is within classrooms and how that's monitored, and how the minimum permissible workplace, what the minimum permissible workplace temperature is. Thank you.
Minister for Education, Sport and Culture to respond.
Thank you, Mr President. Temperature in classrooms will vary throughout the day and will be dependent upon a number and range of variables, including occupancy, ventilation, insulation and efficiency and type of the heating system. The temperature of classrooms is not routinely monitored except for the purposes of automatically switching heating systems on or off. There is no maximum or minimum temperature defined in law for a workplace. However, the employer has a duty to determine what reasonable comfort will be in the particular circumstances. The UK Health and Safety Executive's Code of Practice states the temperature in a workplace should normally be at least 16 degrees Celsius. If work involves rigorous physical effort, the temperature should be at least 13 degrees Celsius. Thank you, Mr President.
Supplementary, Dr Haywood.
Thank you. The Minister is indeed right that the UK guidance suggests a minimum of 16 degrees. However, it is law for the Isle of Man nurseries and childminders to be at 18 degrees currently. Whilst there is no Isle of Man legislation in this regard, the Minister has been very happy to use appropriate UK guidance on other matters such as the nutritional quality of school meals. So what parameters is the Minister considering when she decides whether or not to follow UK guidance on providing safe, suitable venues for education?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr President. It's a little bit outside the scope of the question. However, with regards to monitoring and looking at the suitability of our educational settings, and obviously clearly there is different regulations in place for nurseries, the Minister will be aware that the Treasury Minister has announced that he is going to do a strategic infrastructure review of buildings, and I hope that education will be one of the first to be looked at so that we can ensure that we are providing appropriate buildings for the purposes of education.
Supplementary, Dr Haywood.
Thank you. If the heating in a room kicks on, that's because there's a thermostat in place, and so I think the question is what number is that thermostat set to, because you'll know when the heating's kicked on, the bill will go up exponentially, won't it? Is the Minister aware that some students have been told to remove extra layers? Some students are bringing blankets into classrooms. Is she aware of the impact on learning that's caused by being cold? Several studies since the 1950s have demonstrated there is a drop in higher cognitive functions as the temperature falls, and given that the current cohort of students has had such a disrupted educational experience over the past couple of years, would the Minister not agree that it's now imperative to provide a suitable, safe learning environment for all our students?
Yeah. Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr President. Clearly, we have been in a pandemic for the last 2 years, and we're following totally different guidance than we would in a normal school year. With regards to the safety and suitability of our school buildings, the heating systems are monitored and there is a trend system in place which will be identifying the temperatures and switching on and off as appropriate. But with regards to looking at this further, as I've said to the Honourable Member, any of her concerns, I'm really happy to meet with her, bring them to the department, and we can advise her on how we are addressing any concerns that have been raised by parents. There has been some concerns with regards to the wearing of additional uniform or out of uniform, as the member has stated, the colour of a jumper previously. We do address them as we receive them, but I'd encourage the Honourable Member to send these to the department so that we can address them urgently.
Supplementary, Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr President. Has the department asked schools for any specific information about window opening? And one particular issue is when students appear, one of the first things they often want to do is to close the window, which creates new issues. In terms of the CO2 monitoring, is that being used to actually assess where windows are being opened and not opened? Is there any kind of Big Brother tactics being used to provide that overview? Thank you, Mr President.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr President. Certainly not using CO2 as Big Brother monitoring in any of our classrooms. Obviously, the CO2 equipment has been installed, and we do have a dashboard that's available, and I'm happy to show that to the honourable member so you can see what is monitored. And obviously we do work closely with our other department, our department members in the Department of Infrastructure, who monitor those for us and do put various HEPA filters in place where they are seen to be required.
I mention Mr. Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further to the, I'm pleased to hear about the HEPA filters being deployed. Last Tynwald sitting, I think the Minister referred to 23 HEPA filter devices having been placed in classrooms, and there was, I think, a hint then that there was some additional. Can the Minister give us an update as to how many are now deployed, and using that CO2 monitoring, is that being deployed to those troublesome classrooms where it is impossible to open a window and deal with the CO2 that way?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. Clearly they have been deployed to the areas that didn't have any external ventilation. We currently have a further 23 units on order that will be deployed into classrooms if required. And obviously it's clear that air quality within our learning environments needs to be reviewed, and we will work with DOI and public health in respect of this review to understand and achieve a strategic approach to air quality within our learning environments.
On a supplementary, Dr. Haywood.
Thank you, Mr. President. For our teachers, the classroom is their workplace. Is there any plan to allow the teachers' unions to be representing the views of teachers in this regard on something like a health and safety committee, working with the department to encourage them to have a clean and safe workplace?
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. And obviously there are regular meetings with the unions which have teacher representatives on it. So I'd encourage everybody to discuss that with their unions, bring it forward to the regular department meetings where it can be addressed.